What's up, fam? I'm Hotshot Bennii. Getting your Class A CDL, you're going to have to get your CLP first, which is basically the written test. You got to go over your combination, your general knowledge, and I believe it's the air brakes test. Yes, the air brakes test. Road test, which will consist of your pre-trip inspection, and it will also consist of your road skills, and also will consist of your road trip. Now, unfortunately, in 2022, I don't think this is the same anymore. I don't think you can go do it the way I did it. Unfortunately, you actually have to go to an actual class. So you have to get your CLP, and then you have to get your medical card, and then you have to go sign yourself up, or of course pay for a class to get your full CDL. Now, I was able to get my CLP in 2021, also transition over to 2022, so that way I can get my CDL in 2022. Now, for the people who don't understand this all the way, I already have my CDL. A lot of people who already follow me, this is for you guys who follow me, I already have my CDL, but I did not have air brakes. I took my CDL inspection test in a Hotshot, which is a pickup truck and a 40-foot gooseneck behind it that is actually classified as a Class A CDL holder vehicle. But I was not granted the endorsement of the air brakes in the manual transmission. So to get those restrictions off, I had to go take those restrictions off by taking a full test in a full semi-truck with the air brakes and the manual transmission.
Bad little bitty keep brains on my wrist on rain. Ran up out the bank like it's a robbery. Take care of my mommy, I know she proud of me. Yeah.
Now, before we even get started, there's a couple things I want you guys to remember before we even get started with this video, okay? Now, before we get into the actual pre-trip, I want you guys to remember a couple things before you enter the pre-trip, all right? If it's metal, you have to remember things like it's not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. There are no nuts, bolts missing, and it's securely fastened to the trailer or tractor, or securely mounted to the trailer or tractor. Just remember those things when it comes to anything metal. I also want you guys to remember, if it's rubber, there are no abrasions, there are no cuts, there are no bulges, there are no nuts or bolts missing. It's securely fastened to the tractor or the trailer, or securely mounted to the tractor or the trailer, or whatever part of the vehicle that you're talking about. So another thing, if it's plastic, it's not damaged or cracked or broken, there is no sun damage. You also have to say if it's amber in color, or if it's red in color on any of your marker lights, or if it's clear in color. Now, for your mirrors or anything that's glass on your vehicle, you want to say it's not cracked or broken, it's clearly visible, there are no illegal stickers, and it's properly mounted or securely fastened to the tractor or to the trailer, whatever part of the vehicle that you're talking about. Now we come to your tire. The sidewalls have no bulges, abrasions, or cuts. The tire is evenly worn. The tire pressure is at whatever PSI that you're checking your tire with, for whichever particular tire. This is a trailer tire, and then you have your drives, and then you have your steers. And it's properly mounted and secured, no nuts or bolts are missing. Now, of course, that's not the end of it. Those are just some abbreviations that I use to remember, so that way when I got to certain parts of the test, if I ever felt stuck or I felt like I didn't remember something, I could just go back to those abbreviations in my brain, pull them back out, and just use that or those words to pass my test. It's not going to be, okay, you're doing the whole truck, or it's not going to be, oh, you're just doing this one part. You have to know the whole truck just in case, because they may give it to you at random. They may give you a coupling system, the front of the trailer, which is like, they may say something, the front of the truck, the front of the tractor with all the driver components, and the coupling system. That may be all that they give you. So you have to keep that in mind when you take your test. These abbreviations help, because if you forget something, you study so hard for the front, but you forgot your coupling system, that you, sorry, that you can remember them abbreviations just in case on test day, because it's a lot to remember. It is a lot to remember, but it's very important that you do remember this, so that way when you're on the road, you can practice your pre-trip every single day and also practice your post-trip every single day and perform it properly, so that way when you go on the road, you're not killing anybody or killing yourself or causing any damage to any company's property or anything like that. You feel what I'm saying? Now, for the first part of the pre-trip, just you know, we're gonna go from the front end of the truck all the way down to the end of the trailer. What I did was, on my test was, I'm already looking for my lights, okay? Just go ahead and knock everything down one by one, okay? So you're gonna look at your lights, okay? So my marker lights. Marker lights are, those are your marker lights, okay? So remember the abbreviation. I would say my marker lights, they're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're properly mounted. They're amber in color, okay? And you can say some other stuff like securely fastened to the tractor, something like that. Okay, say as much as possible. You want to say as much as possible, but also use the key words. This is a lingo that you have to learn. Not cracked, bent, or broken, properly mounted and secured, and it's amber in color. It's amber in color because the color of it is amber, so you would say it's amber in color. Your left and right turning signals, which I pointed out before. You have your right one and you have your left one, okay? You move on to your left, right, and turning signal, you say the same thing. My left, right, and turning signal is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's amber in color, okay? You can say some other stuff that you want to say just to make it sound spicy. You know, say as much as possible. Then you also say my low beam and my high beams are properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. And it's clear and visible, okay? Those are some of the things that you would say. Moving along. Another key component that I don't want you guys to forget or miss, okay, when you're standing in front of the truck, okay? But this whole beginning of this test is you standing in front of the truck, okay? So when you're standing in front of the truck, you also have to say, I'm looking underneath, checking to see if there's any puddles or leaks, see if anything's leaking, okay? You also have to say, I want to see if the truck is swaying to the left or swaying to the right, indicating that I have a suspension problem, if so, okay? Things like that. All right, so you have to indicate those during your inspection test, because those are things you're going to be looking for when you're on the road in the real life. Also did, which is not really mandatory, but you know, I did it for my test so that way I wouldn't forget it. Like I said, I went above and beyond. I also checked my windows, okay? I'm checking my windows. It is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. Can't say bent, but you know, I said it anyway. And then I said it's visible and there are no illegal stickers. And I also said I'll be checking my mirrors, and I actually went up to my mirrors and I checked my mirrors and I said it's not cracked, bent, or broken. They're properly mounted and secured, and they're clear and visible with no illegal stickers. And I said things like that even on the outside of the truck, even though that's part of your in-cab inspection. I did all that on the outside of the truck, so that way when if I got there, you know, if I forgot it, I could remember or whatever, at least I got my points on my test. I try to get as much points as possible, okay? Your marker lights, okay? Remember I say clearance lights and marker lights. They're really checking for those because most trucks don't have them on the side, but because my truck has them on the side, you also have to indicate right here, my marker lights are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken, and they are amber in color, and they're securely fastened to the tractor, okay? Say things like that. You just have to be, repetitive, use all the words, use the lingo, use the abbreviations, and use it for the right piece of equipment. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, when I first went and took my test, literally the first time I took my test, I literally said it's not cracked, bent, or broken for every single thing. You can't do that, okay? You cannot do that. I said it's not cracked, bent, or broken for every single thing. You cannot do that. You have to know what you're talking about. So after that part, you will say, moving on to the next part, after that part, you will say, I will now open my hood to begin the engine compartment test. Now, of course, once you move on to the next part, you know, she's going to stop you and say, okay, that completes your, you know, whatever the part of that test that you were taking, which was the front tractor part of the test. And now you'll move on to the engine compartment of the test. I went to the easier parts that I knew for sure. You know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to know your engine compartment anyway, but I know some people, they may not know it in depth like that. But you just want to be able to inspect your vehicle to the best possible way, so you know that you're ready and road ready to drive for that day. So what I went ahead and did was, like anything else that I've driven in my life, I went to the oil. Check my oil. You have to physically pull it out. Wipe it, Once you wipe it, you have to reinsert. And as you're saying, as you're doing this, you have to say all these things that you're doing. All right? And that is how you check your oil. Make sure that your oil is good in color. Make sure it's at a good level. You don't have to wipe it, you can just put it back in there. Same thing with the power steering, okay? Wherever your power steering is located. Now, like I said, a lot of people may not be familiar with the motors. So what I do is, I just look at some of my components. I'm pretty kind of savvy a little bit when it comes to mechanical and to understanding what components are working for what. I know that this is my steering linkage, okay? This obviously connects to the cabin, comes over here, and it connects to my whole steering component right here. So I follow the hoses up. This has got to be my power steering reservoir. So I will take this off. I'll take it out, and I'm checking my power steering reservoir to make sure that I have power steering. We'll say not to point because, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's almost like, I'm not gonna say it's a cheat code or nothing, but just to make the test easier, or if you have an examiner who doesn't exactly know what you're talking about, they're just going down a checklist to make sure you hear it. Because see, now this is the point that I want you guys to understand, okay? I'm not telling you anything wrong. Sometimes you may get an examiner that does not know exactly what you are talking about. An examiner will only hear what you're talking about and see it on the paper and check it as they go. You feel what I'm saying? Now, some examiners are really, really thorough. They know what they're talking about. They've driven trucks before. They know what they're doing. But some examiners, unfortunately, that's the way it is. They don't really know what they're talking about. So people will tell you, don't take a pointer and don't point at the objects. But the goal here is not to take the shortcut. The goal here is for you to understand what you are actually talking about, so when you are on the road, you actually know what you're doing when you're on the road, and you're not just here just to pass the test. You have to physically know what you're talking about. And I'm gonna send you guys a link, or you guys can click the link in the description, so you actually get the actual, the flips that I looked through. Because I looked through I screenshotted some stuff on this website, and I just read it 1,000 times, and it's stuck in my head, okay? From the reservoir, we'll move down to, these are the hoses, okay? We actually have hoses connected. So remember what I said, anything with hoses or rubber, because this will be rubber, anything like that, what do we say, okay? So there are no abrasions, there are no bulges, there are no cuts. It's not leaking. It's properly mounted, and it's properly secured, or it's properly or securely fastened to the tractor or to my steering linkage, whatever you want to say. Say as many words as possible, especially if you know what you're talking about, and go over these things with this particular item, okay? We're gonna move on to the next thing. Something that I did not know when I got this truck, or when we first got this truck, I had to learn a lot of pieces that I knew nothing about. This is my air compressor, okay? Now, one way I remembered it was, if you actually look on the actual blue device right here, it says compression. So I'm like, okay, the only thing on this truck that should be compression is your air compressor. So this is my air compressor. So you would say it's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. There are no leaks, okay? You would say there are no nuts or bolts missing. It's securely fastened to the motor, to the tractor, what have you. One thing with the compressor that you do have to also remember, you have to say it is gear driven. You just want to knock out all the hoses out the way. Go ahead and just say, I'm checking all of my hoses. There are no abbreviation. There are no abrasions, no bulges, no cuts. They're properly mounted and secured to the proper item that they're properly mounted and secured to. Just different ways that you can say it like that if you want to say it like that. But just remember those words when you're looking at hoses, okay? That's why I said that in the beginning, all right? Anything that's rubber, that's technically what you're going to refer to when you're looking at anything rubber, okay? Then you'll move on to your coolant. This is my coolant over here. This is my coolant, the area that my coolant's at. I'll say I'm checking my coolant. And you don't really have to say much about that. I just say you make sure that it's at optimal level. You'll check it, make sure it's at optimal level. You don't have to physically go and check that, but I mean, some people may want you to. Like I said, just be thorough, but just say I'm checking my coolant level, make sure it's at optimal level. My coolant reservoir is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no leaks. Don't just say not cracked, bent, or broken for every single thing, all right? Don't be like me. That's my first time I took my test. You want to go over the test, you want to say it's not leaking, it's no bulges or cuts, depending on what the item is, whatever it is, okay? Steering components, okay? You want to talk about your steering components. All right, this is my steering linkage, okay? My steering linkage is properly mounted and secured. No nuts or bolts are missing. Say where your air chamber. So this is my air chamber. You also have to say my air chamber is properly mounted and secured. No nuts or bolts are missing. My hoses to my air chamber have no abrasions, cuts, or leaks. You will also talk about the brakes, but we'll get to that in just a second when we look at an actual tire. Let's go to the other side so you guys can see what we're talking about on the other side. All right, now that we're on this side, we'll talk about the things that's on the passenger side, okay? Now they will say something like, a part of the test that I had was, you have to talk about everything that's on the driver's side of the vehicle, but if there's any special or unique items on the passenger side of the motor, you also have to talk about it as well. So these are special and, you know, unique sides or unique components on this side of the motor. So alternator, okay? This is my alternator. My alternator is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. No nuts or bolts are missing. Okay, securely fastened to the motor, to the chassis, whatnot. And then you also say that it is belt driven, okay? Because there's obviously two belts right here is belt driven. All right, my water pump is actually in front down there in the bottom. And I would say my water pump is properly mounted and secured. Not cracked, bent, or broken. No nuts are missing. No nuts or bolts are missing, and it also is belt driven. My hoses, no cuts or bulges or abrasions are in them. There are no leaks. They're properly mounted and secured. Okay, I know these are U-bolts because, you know, they're in the shape of a U. You know what I mean? So I say that my U-bolts are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. No nuts or bolts are missing. And then I will also say that they're properly mounted to the chassis or to the axle, because this is your steer axle right here. So I would say it's properly mounted to the chassis. Anything that sounds good, even it has to make sense, of course, but anything that sounds good, they want to hear that. They want to hear it, okay? Then you will come to your brakes. You would say your brakes are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no rust. There are no illegal welds. All right, so then you will talk about your brake shoes. My brake shoes, they're not worn too thin. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. You will talk about your slack adjusters. Not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. It has no more than 1 inch of play in between it. Okay, so that's for your slack adjusters and your push rod. Coming back to the tire. Okay, this is when you talk about the tire. So you would say, my sidewalls have no bulges, cuts, or abrasions in them. My tire is evenly worn. Okay. You also will say, I would check my tire gauge with a tire gauge. Okay, or I would check my tire PSI with a tire gauge. The tire PSI for a steer tire, I think is 120 PSI. I think it is 120 PSI. Okay, I would check that with the valve stem. You have to point out the valve stem. I would check the valve stem, and I would check that with the tire gauge. Okay, my valve stem is properly mounted and secured. It's not bent, cracked, or broken. No nuts or bolts are missing. Then you would go to the tire rim. My rim is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. No nuts or bolts are missing. I don't see any signs of rust. I don't see any signs of corrosion or anything like that. Checking my hub seals. Checking my hub seals. It's properly mounted and secured. There are no leaks. Okay? Same thing with the bolts, the nuts of the bolts. Checking my bolts, properly mounted and secured. No nuts or bolts are missing. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no signs of rust, anything like that. Remember that, okay? So this is literally the whole beginning part of your test. Now, don't get me wrong. I know it's a lot to remember, but trust me, I'm gonna have the link in the video for you, so that way you guys can actually see your pre-trip and you read it every single day, because a video wasn't enough for me, but to some people, a video may be great for them. They have other great videos out there that are a little bit more in-depth, like an actual school. If you don't want to watch me, that's cool, I understand. Click these links up here so you guys can tap into those videos. This is another interesting one that I had to learn, the coupling system, because on the hot shot, the coupling system was a lot different, but you can say it was damn near the same, but it was a little bit of a difference. I'm checking my sockets on my cab side and my trailer side. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. Okay, I don't hear any leaks. I don't see any leaks. My hoses have no abrasion, no cuts, no bulges in them. No leaks are in my hoses. I will also say the mount for my hoses, they're not touching the actual chassis of the actual tractor. I would say that my green electrical cord is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken on my two ends. There are no leaks, there are no bulges, there's no cuts. I think you actually have to say that different from the actual the glad hands themselves, because those are your air hoses, of course. That is your actual electrical hose right there. So you have to say those separately, because that's electric. You can't just say hoses for everything, because this is electric. Okay. So the difference between the electrical hose and the actual air hose, you would say, it's not ripped, torn, or anything like that, because it's not exactly an air hose. It's not air coming through here. It's just an electrical hose. It's electrical cable. So you say it's not ripped, torn, cracked, or anything like that. So I'm checking my fittings on my cab side. And I'm also checking my fittings on my trailer side over here, okay? I'm checking my glad hands, right? These are your glad hands right here, right? Your glad hands. Checking that they're properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. My glad hand garments are properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no leaks, there are no illegal welds. and it's properly fastened or securely fastened to the trailer. Another part of it that you can also say that you want to remember is no chunks are missing in your garments. If they're riding, you don't know if they're saying anything bad or good, but you just gotta hope for the best, you know what I mean? All right, now remember, this is one part of the test that even though some instructors may not instruct you to actually go under here and inspect it, you still have to call out what you're going to be looking for. Even if they don't physically make you go under there, sometimes they just want to hear you say it. They don't want to physically actually go do the actual job, you know what I mean? So just remember that you have to know, you know, just say it. As long as you say it, you should be fine, okay? So I'm checking my apron. My apron is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds, and it's properly mounted to the trailer body. I would then go to my kingpin. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. Then I will go to my skid plate. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. Check your release handle. I'm checking my release handle. It's properly mounted and secured. My springs aren't broken. They are not missing. Then I'll check my locking jaw. Properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. Securely fastened to the trailer body or to the tractor body. Checking my platform, which is the whole thing right here. My whole platform is properly mounted and secured, not cracked, bent, or broken. No illegal welds, and it's securely fastened to the chassis or securely, you know, mounted to the chassis. The slider. Okay, your slider is properly mounted and secured. It's properly seated and it's properly locked. Now we're going to be checking the mounting bolts. None are missing. No shiny pieces, and it's properly mounted or properly tightened. I also want you guys to remember that this is my experience, okay? This is my experience, and this is how I perform my test and how I pass my test. This first time I took my test, I said nothing but it's not cracked, bent, or broken, and that was an absolute fail. The second time I took my test, I actually broke down parts of the equipment and broke it down with the actual lingo. Now, there are going to be some things that I have missed, and I hope you guys don't account to those, but there's some things that, like, I could have said something about my bushings, or if they ask you stuff about, like, your field caps or stuff like that, you'll see. That's why I gave you guys the actual link, so you can actually look through the actual pamphlet or the actual screenshots and see what it is that you need to say on your test if you want to go above and beyond. This is the things that I use to pass my test. It worked out for me. She passed me, and then of course I know how to drive the truck because I've been driving the truck already. I was able to pass my test. That's really your easiest part. You would just say, I'm checking my clearance and my marker lights. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. They're amber in color. Okay, this is the front part. Now it depends on what type of trailer you got. If you got one of those bigger trailers, you're gonna have to talk about your headboard. You got to talk about whatever. But like I said, everybody's test is different, so you're gonna have to go ahead and refer to the link that I sent you guys, so you guys can look through the pamphlet and see what you guys are missing on your actual test. Everybody's test may be different because you may have a different vehicle. You know what I mean? This is obviously your first part of the test, and I would say, or the first part of your front part of your trailer. I was checking my landing gear. Okay, my landing gear, my landing arms. Make sure that it's properly mounted and secured and not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds. Are securely fastened to the trailer or securely mounted to the trailer. No nuts or bolts are missing. Point out your marker lights, your side marker lights. I'm checking my side marker lights. They're properly mounted and secured. They are amber in color. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no illegal welds, and there are no nuts or bolts missing. The person to feel comfortable with me, I want the person to feel like I knew what I was talking about. And I said, I'm also checking the frame of the trailer underneath. I'm checking the frame, checking the cross members in the frame, make sure they're properly mounted and secured. Now, sometimes they may make you go underneath and do stuff like this, but that'll come for the air chambers and the brake lines for your actual tires on the actual trailer. So I'll just say I'm checking the cross members and the beams underneath, make sure they're properly mounted and secure. There are no illegal welds, not cracked, bent, or broken. There are no nuts or bolts missing. I'm checking the wood. I'm checking the wood or whatever. Like I said, everybody's trailer is different, but I'm checking the wood on the trailer. There are no holes. There are no wood sticking up. All my nuts and bolts are present. There's nothing missing. Properly mounted and secured. You know, just say stuff like that, just so she feels comfortable with what I'm talking about. She knows what I'm talking about. Okay. For this part of the trailer, you also talk about the tire again. Okay. You have to do a full inspection on the tire again, and once you do it for this one tire, you don't have to do it no more for the rest of the tires. So you'll say, my sidewalls have no abrasions, no bulges or cuts. My tire is evenly worn. Okay. I would check the tire gauge or check the tire pressure with a gauge. The tire should be at 110 psi. All right. Then you will also say that my valve stem, I'm checking my valve stem, it's not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds, all my nuts and bolts are present or they're not missing. My sidewalls or my seam is properly mounted and secured, there's no leaks. My rim is properly mounted, not cracked, bent, or broken, no illegal welds. Checking my air chambers, there are no leaks, it's not cracked, bent, or broken, properly mounted and secured. No nuts or bolts are missing. Then the lines, the air hoses, properly mounted and secured, no abrasions, no cuts. Once I've completed this part of this test, I will do that for all my tires from then on and so forth. To be honest with you guys, that's really what I did to pass my test. Now, I know a lot of people are gonna say, oh, you missed this or you missed that. I hope I didn't miss anything, but I know there's a couple things that I did miss. I think I forgot to talk about my bushings. They want you to talk about your mud flaps. What else? You're gonna do things like the outside of the cab, like your fuel cap, your fuel tank. You're checking your actual toolboxes right there, your step, your actual grabbing points, your 3-point of stance grabbing, your 3-point contact of grabbing. You gotta check those as well. But those are all like part of the, like I said, it depends on what part of the test that you got. I'm gonna actually have a pamphlet so you actually can check the actual real original paperwork instead of just listening to me. But all different parts of the test that you will have to check. The in-cab inspection is a whole different thing. That's a whole different beast. I think I would touch on that in a whole nother separate video because that's something that we have to start the truck up and actually physically show. But that is another part of the test that's also inside the pamphlet if you guys want to check that out. So it's a little slideshow of actual things. It's going to break down everything of your test of your pre-trip inspection. But like I said, this is my experience and what I did to pass my pre-trip inspection. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I love you guys. I'm Hot Shot Bennii, and I'm trying to make a better strive for safety in this community.
Hey, counting these commas, we run it up. All of these hoes, they won't come with us. Sipping that dirty, she getting real sloppy. Staying high, now she living the dreams. On the pants, Magello on me. Jolly Ranchers mix it up with the lean. Johnny Dang, all my diamonds on fleek. Pop me a perk, she think I'm a geek. Hot in that land, why you looking at me? Counting this money, you ain't on my team. Setting a plot, we running through schemes. Hundreds on hundreds on hundreds, I want me a million. I ain't gonna stop till I'm rich. Getting this money like Money Mitch. Promise again that I